Hey PC Gamers, and welcome back to the PC Gamer Chat Log. I am Lauren Morgan.
And hey everyone, I'm Mollie Taylor.
And this week Mollie and I are talking to Associate Editor Ted Litchfield about speedrunning, which is of course the very heroic act of playing games very fast in many different ways. We're gonna talk a little bit about like different kinds of speedruns that exist, some of our favorite ones, some of like the favorite speedrunners we've seen, and like different neat tricks. So stick around for that. But before that, Mollie, what did you play last week?
Yeah, I played quite a lot actually. I finished Chance of Sinar, great puzzle game. You guys should play it. I've spoken enough about that game over the last few weeks.
We'll stop talking about Chance of Sinar.
Yeah, we both finished it now, so no more Chance of Sinar talk. But you should all play it. I've also been playing a lot of Tekken 8. My review for that went up on the site this week. You can go read that on pcgamer.com. I like it a lot. I think I expected to like it. I've had a lot of opportunities to play it already, like across like different events and tournaments, but playing the full game was super cool, super exciting. I have some very nice words to say about it, so you should go read those. And then in the spirit of continuing to use my Steam Deck a lot more, now I finished Chance of Sinar, I'm currently finally playing Dave the Diver, which because that game like popped off last year and I did not put a lot of time into it, and I very quickly fell off it because this was like at a time where I just did not want to be at my PC that much, so I did not play it too much. So I'm playing it on my Steam Deck at the minute. I'm having fun, but I will say I'm only like a few hours in and I am kind of finding like the diving section kind of tedious already. Yeah, I don't know if you've played Dave the Diver, Lauren.
No. Everybody was so into it, and like something happened where I was like, everyone has this covered. I'm just going to sit back and wait. It was like I got overwhelmed by the fact that everyone liked a game and I didn't know what to do about it, which is like, what does that even mean? But
no, I get it. Truly.
For some reason, I did not touch it, and that was like the vibe of my feelings around it. I was just like, and
like
then
everyone likes this. It's scary to look at it. Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, and I do like it. It's so full of charm. Everyone is like very mean to Dave for some reason, like the main character. Like a new character will be introduced and they'll just immediately start negging him. And I'm like, why are you like being mean to him? He's just there. And like, he is kind of grumpy sometimes. Like someone's like, can you do this thing for me? And he's like, why the fuck don't you do it? So maybe some of the negging is justified. But yeah, I am finding the diving sections like a little tedious at the minute because you can dive twice a day as well. So I could be spending like 10 to 15 minutes underwater. I'm like, cool. That was like a lot of diving, and then it's like, okay, do it a second time, and I'm like, and I know that's only going to get longer as well as like I upgrade my equipment and I have like more stuff to do.
Adding in other activities at some point.
Yeah, I think they kind of build upon it eventually, and you've kind of got more stuff to do. Like I said, I'm only like 3.5 hours in at the minute. I think I've not played like a whole bunch of it. So I'm hoping that it gets a little less tedious. But yeah, the diving right now is just, it's like a little samey for me. But it's so full of charm, I'm kind of like pushing through, you know, because I like the sushi bit where you serve all the sushi. I like that bit. Yeah, the sushi bit with the sushi. Crazy. So yeah, that's me. Are you continuing your resolution of trying something new every week, Lauren?
I did manage to scrape in something new last week, but I did spend most of my weekend playing The Sims, which is, of course, not at all new to me. I spent a lot of time over the weekend working on building like an industrial lofts apartment lot.
My favorite thing to build. Yes.
Like making a loft floor plan work is like tricky, and I built myself an actual like inspired by a place I lived like years ago, like with outside, you know, walkable areas and whatever, but I managed to make like 6 units that were lofts, and I just started like because I don't do Create-a Sim, so I just started grabbing families out of the like default household manager and just like tweaking them a little bit and just like throwing them into a house and being like, okay, this one is going to be inspired by you, and decorated like 3, 4. I think I wound up doing like 4 different units, and they were very small. So they were very doable. I love doing like small lots. So that was like my entire weekend was just decorating these lofts that I built.
It's perfect. It's so good. I love doing that as well. Like just kind of taking a sim or like coming up with a sim in my head, even if I never make them, and decorating it like around them, right? Like I always just tend to do like roommates, like an apartment with 2 roommates. One has like this personality, they have this job, the other one has this personality and this job and these hobbies. And then I love just like putting little bits of both their personalities.
Yes.
Like, oh, it's the best bit. Lauren,
otherwise it's so easy to get lost in a build, like with inspiration. You have to have like someone that you're like making it for in your head so that you can like it all comes together.
Decorate it appropriately. Oh my god, Lauren, you might get me back on it. I haven't touched the Sims.
You're gonna have a Sims week.
Yeah, I haven't touched it for a hot sec, so maybe maybe I need to get back on it. Download some more CC. Treat myself.
It's dangerous. But then I did play a new game. I played Enshrouded, which came out this week. I haven't played a lot of it as of recording. By the time people hear this, I think I will have played more. But it's another survival crafting game. It's very pretty. It's very exploration focused. Chris likes it. I think Chris is probably reviewing it. Like Chris, who we've had on the podcast, of course, if you listened, he came and talked to us about crafting at one point for a particular episode because he is our survival craft games man for sure. He likes it. It's like very exploration based. The combat is a little just like a smidge more complex than survival crafting games usually are. It has like action-y combat where you're like locking onto an enemy and then you're attacking them, and it's third person. There's like wands and like big glowing swords, so I enjoy that because I do not like first person combat.
No.
I don't like first person melee, like stuff that you usually get in a survival craft game where you're just like slapping at stuff that's right in front of your face. I don't enjoy that at all. So third person combat, nice there. And it's very like, you establish a flame as a waypoint and then you just sort of like are crawling out to other places. The fast travel is very easy. So it does give you that ability to, unlike Valheim, which forced you to like create an entire new base of operations for each new area, kind of because of not being able to take certain resources through portals. You really just had to like start over and like create a new forward camp kind of for each boss. This one, because of the easy fast travel, I think it more so encourages you to keep one main base of operations on the map, and then like jump around to explore the shroud and like level up your stuff to be in it longer. So anyway, I'm going to be playing more of that certainly this week as you're listening. But I did start playing it last week. So I did play a new game to me very briefly before taking a heavy Sims detour. So it's okay. We'll do better next week.
It's fine.
All right. Well, with that done then, Molly, let's go get Ted and we're going to talk about speedrunning.
Yeah.
Hey, Ted, thank you for joining us to talk about speedrunning. I figure between you and Molly, who do a decent amount of like daily reporting, you guys have probably both interacted with like individual speedrunning stories. Like, Ted, were you watching AGDQ last week? And like, I think you were following Baldur's Gate 3 speedrunning recently too, as it was developing.
Yeah, I was very excited. There's a very good speedrunner, May. She's got just a great sense of showmanship, great sense of humor for like these Baldur's Gate 3 runs, which fits the game because it's so weird, and like the way Larian built this game to be able to be played in co-op and have like these persistent characters over an 80-hour campaign lends itself to like a lot of weird shenanigans with like picking up bodies and reverse pickpocketing them into other characters, and that like catapults you through the world, just delightful stuff. It was built for this, so that was really exciting, and I think she had a really good showing with like an all-act speed run of Baldur's Gate 3.
Got it. Yeah. It's sort of like foundationally for anybody who doesn't like interact with this stuff all the time. Like people have heard about speed running and like maybe you see an occasional run, but just like the most basic of primers on like usually when you're talking about speed running a game, like a community will develop around it, people that are trying to figure out how to play it faster, and that usually involves like glitches or hacks or like weird different strategies, and they'll separate into different categories. Like the one that I think a lot of people see the most is any percent, which is saying that like you get to the game end screen with whatever level of completing things in between that entails. So in an any percent run, a lot of times speedrunners are like skipping big portions of the game by like skipping boss fights or a whole area. They're trying to like work around the game just to get to the end in whatever fashion that entails, as fast as possible. So that's how you wind up with a game like The Legend of Zelda that people speedrun in 30 minutes, which are like, you can't play the whole Legend of Zelda game in 30 minutes. No, they're skipping big portions of it with like tricks, tools, glitches that they come up with. And like some of the ways that speedrunners figure out to do that with different games. I mean, sometimes they are like messing with the physics of a game. That happens a lot in Bethesda games, is weirdo physics glitches. Yeah, the classics.
I feel like it's a foundational image of the modern internet is seeing Mario on the stairs facing away, and like he jumps 3 times and then it's like he butt scoots into the stairs and then like just launches away. Like I feel like most of our viewers, listeners, even if like they don't follow this, like they have seen that particular trick, which I don't even know the name of, but I am delighted by that.
And that one's
it's called like it's like a back turn something, I think. I can't remember what it's called. It has like an acronym.
Like it's got a gymnastics name or something.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember specifically like what it's actually called. Hold on, I will look it up while you guys talk.
I'm curious. That one probably involves like messing with collision boxes, which is another big thing that speedrunners do, is messing with the geometry of a level to either go out of bounds and escape, or mess with the way they interact with like other enemies. Sometimes they're doing funky stuff with AI, like of enemies that they're encountering to make certain things happen. And then there's even more esoteric stuff where sometimes like for very old games, they're affecting the way that like game data is stored in memory of a particular game, and like weird things happen when they do like take particular actions in sequence. Really, really wild, strange like stuff in certain older games. But that's just sort of like what speedrunning is like and what it entails. Do you guys have a particular game or style of game that you've like personally enjoyed watching speedrun the most?
Yeah, for sure. And also it's backwards long jump. That's the Mario 64.
It's like an Olympic event. Backwards long jump.
Backwards long jump. Yeah, I think you're right. That is like such an iconic like speed run move that I think so many people, even if they don't know it by name, they will like have seen the clip, right?
But there is at least one guy watching who is like, it's called backwards long jump. It's called, don't point it out if you don't know what it's called.
Yeah, well, we said it now, so it's all good. It's a backwards long jump. Yeah, it is so iconic. And like, I do think Mario games are very, very fun to watch. During the pandemic, during, you know, the Locky D's, the Super Mario Odyssey.
That you call it that.
I'm British. We have to. We have to turn everything into just the worst.
Diminutive of.
Yeah, we just have to give everything like the most traumatic situations, like the stupidest nicknames possible. During the pandemic, I got like very into watching Twitch, which I think I have mentioned before on this podcast. I was watching like a butt ton of Twitch during the pandemic, and I got very into watching Super Mario Odyssey speedruns, which that game is so much fun to watch someone who's like very well versed in just how that game works and like all its little moving parts. It is an absolute joy to watch an expert just roll through that game. I watched like a lot of Smallland, I'm pretty sure his name is. He's like a very, I think at that time as well, he was like a very big and popular Super Mario Odyssey speedrunner. And then there was also another streamer called Point Crow who I think saw what Small Ant was doing, and he started doing some like some like joke speed runs. Small Ant was very much of like the any percent variety. And then I think Point Crow was over there doing like nipple percent speed runs, which was just like, how quickly could you get Mario like in his underwear? Basically, I think the speed run was. So Super Mario Odyssey, 100%. I also really, really enjoyed watching the Elden Ring speed runs. I think being like a reporter like at the time as well, doing a lot of news at the time, that was probably the closest I've ever been following like a community speedrunning a game from like fresh like 3-hour run down to like it was like sub 20 minutes or something within like a few weeks. It was wild how quickly and I think that was literally like launching yourself across the map, right? Was that like catapulting yourself up and like into a totally different area? Am I correct in that?
I remember some real weirdness with like the final bridge to the final boss. Like you can skip the third act of the game by like going underneath like the bridge at the Erd Tree. Like just wild shit you just wouldn't think of. Yeah.
Very cool. So yeah, those are probably my two big ones, especially in recent years, that I kind of remember actively paying attention to.
What about you, Ted? Do you have a favorite game?
The big one for me, very foundational, was there was like a 3-month window between the console release of Dark Souls 2 and the PC release of Dark Souls 2, because 2014 was a dark time. And so in between, it's like I got my fix by watching he's a really big streamer, I think, Lobos Jr., his Dark Souls 2 speedrun, and he was doing all bosses speedruns. And like I was just watching those instead of doing my work for college. And that like sticks really in my head. For me, it's like if speedrunning is prime, like having it open on another window while doing work. Or doing a remote Dungeons and Dragons with my friends. It's like, those TikTok videos where it's like you always have to have somebody off to the side cutting the soap, like while there's the main thing you're watching. I'm stimming, watching speedrun videos or like fighting games, which are both stuff like I don't do myself, but it's just like really entertaining to see it done so well. And I like how speedrunning is competitive, but kind of not monetized and not like almost like assembly line in the same way that esports is, right? Like there's not the same tension there, it feels like. So I just really dig it.
Yeah. I mean, the big central event of like global speedrunning is like AGDQ, Austin Gemstone Quick, which is a charity event that happens twice a year, but they do programming like kind of year round at this point, right?
Yeah, they do a lot. I think you're right, Ted, in that it's like competitive, but I think it's one of those like really rare occasions, I guess, where it's like very competitive but very collaborative at the same time, right? Like I think they go hand in hand very well. Even though they're competing, you'll often see like top speedrunners kind of actively sharing tech and new strats that they've discovered, and like obviously there's some gatekeeping. There's gonna be a little gatekeeping in like every competitive thing that exists, right? Yeah. But I will say I do find it like immensely collaborative as well as being competitive. That is something I really do like about it.
Like the individual run execution is competitive, of course. People will trade back and forth like best world times on like different categories and whatever. But yeah, the discovery of like new routes or new tech or new skips is very, very community based for like I would say pretty much every game. I don't know, I'm sure there's some out there that are very siloed, but for the most part, it's very community effort all of the time. I would say my favorites conceptually are like stealth game speedruns. I really like watching Hitman speedruns, and Desperados 3, when it came out, I was watching the speedruns for that as they developed. I didn't ever watch any of the speedruns for like Shadow Tactics for the prior game to Desperados 3, but I really enjoy the way that those are really hinge on AI they're always messing with, like, in Hitman you're trying to like to do in no suit, or like suit only, no being seen. Now I'm forgetting the words that you're supposed to use for these things. You know what I'm talking about? Like a really specific run, and they'll do very specific things, like shoot in a certain direction to like distract a guard, and then they're just like walking around like wherever and like throwing things very precisely, certain like stealth tech, whatever. They do get down to like seconds, like under 10 seconds per level in Hitman 3. Like some of them are so incredibly short, and there is like a point at which then I'm like, what am I watching? Like, it's really cool that they managed to do this, but it is like runs that are more in like the 30-minute category are usually the most fun to like actually watch. There's enough time to explain what you're doing. There's like a trick and then some like traversal to be done, like a mix of things. I really enjoy the concept of Hitman and like Desperado's runs, but when you get down to like that short of a run, it's hard to like take it in and feel like you enjoyed watching the thing. It's probably really satisfying to be a person who's like good at doing those 7-second runs though. Yeah. What about like individual people that you guys have like either interviewed or encountered or done through like reporting? Do you guys have runners or tricks or stuff that are very near and dear to you from reporting?
I do not. So I don't know how in my few years of reporting I have never been blessed enough to chat with like a speedrunner about their stuff. I don't know if you have, Ted, if you've spoken to any cool speedrunners.
Yeah, I haven't spoken to any directly. It's always been reporting, that kind of, we atomized remote work kind of deal. But yeah, speedrunners I definitely admire. Did some coverage of Nuclear's Skyrim speedruns, like those some early stories I wrote, and then Tyler and I, for the most part, and I think Harvey as well, have been covering May's different speedruns, and again, just a very fun sensibility for this very, very wacky game that definitely just makes it very easy to talk about and like easy to bring to people who don't know a lot about Baldur's Gate 3 necessarily. Like they can get, there's some shenanigans with killing people and then stuffing them in a box, and that teleports places.
Is that what's called shadow boxing? Was that
is shadow boxing. It's okay. I don't fully understand. Like I don't know if we know exactly why it works, but it's effectively like I think it has something to do with like her main quest importance, because she's tied to the Githyanki artifact. And yeah, just from what I saw, it is you kill Shadowheart, and then because it's got this really malleable inventory system, you can pick up her corpse, which I love that when you pick up dead bodies in Baldur's Gate 3, they show up in your inventory as their like character portrait, like fills the square. And then containers in Larian's games seem to be kind of funky and like have some like dark eldritch like Twin Peaks thing going on with them. So you put the dead body into the container, you set the container on the ground, you light it on fire, and then from what I could tell, you just shake it around a little bit. And you do this at the beginning of Act 3, and it teleports you to the final encounter, not Act 3, Act 2. And then there's a kind of bad ending you can get from the end of Act 2 that you can activate through a certain companion, and you do that, and you have beaten the game two-thirds of the way through.
How do people find this stuff out? This is like one of my favorite things, right? Is just people being like, oh, I found this new thing that works. Like, it's kind of weird, but like, trust me on this. And then maybe like 2 weeks later, someone will be like, oh yeah, I optimized this, by the way. Like, this thing that you're doing that's kind of weird, I made it more consistent. And that's like so wild to me. And I know, like, I think that's something else I really enjoy about speedrunning is a lot of it is organic. Some of it is like, we have tool assisted speedruns as well, which is like the theoretical best way you can tackle something, right? And I think that can open up new strategies sometimes. But just how bonkers is it to just be like, oh, what if I put Shadowheart in this box and then do this thing? Like, I am not intelligent enough to ever in my life come up with strategies like this.
That is my favorite thing to hear speedrunners say in like a YouTube video or anything else, is we don't know why this works.
Yeah.
I love that. That makes me so happy. I just heard someone say it in a video about Hitman 3 speedrunning, about something called, I think, gun flashing, where you like pull out a pistol, you shoot like directly at people, and then like sometimes they just then fail to perceive you as a threat, and they don't know why that works. They don't know what's happening in the game, like in the AI of all of those like bystanders, that makes gun flashing work. They have no idea, but they do it. And as you say, Mollie, like that actually kind of is like one of my favorite individual speedrunning stories that I've done reporting on, is kind of for that reason. I years ago, or like several years ago, in 2020, actually, I just looked at the story, and of course it was 2020. And as Ted says, I was watching AGDQ on another monitor while working. I was watching the Dark Souls run for that year, which Regal was doing, who I've talked to for a different trick since then. I didn't talk to him for this story. But what my ears perked up at was the explanation for what's called Sen's Gate Skip in Dark Souls. The original, the way the person explained it as I was listening, I was like, hold on, you're doing what? And the answer was they were standing on a particular stairway step, and then they triggered the death camera for the game. So like all of a sudden you can't see the character anymore. You're looking top down. You're invisibly below this bridge and walking around, and then they go through the gate that's not currently loaded because of the death camera, and then suddenly they like sit down in a bonfire on the other side of a gate that was closed before. And that was one of my favorite things to like investigate and figure out how that works, because like you say, Mollie, like the answer is somebody finds some weird like thing and they're sharing it around like in a YouTube video clip or like to another person, and they're like, this strange thing happened in this game. And speedrunners are great at going, oh, interesting. Can you do it on purpose? And like sometimes the answer is no, I don't know how. And then they will just mess with things for like days, weeks, whatever, until they can produce like something that's reproducible. And like suddenly it's a core part of a speed run. And that Sen's Gate Skip like has several foundational things in it where it's incredible to me that like the things that they can explain now, where what's happening in that skip is in Dark Souls, it turns out in Souls games, there is a collision plane that is for the death camera that triggers, that like does the overhead camera. And there's a collision plane, invisible, obviously, both of these things are invisible, immediately below that, that is the one that kills you as soon as you touch it, right? So presumably you've fallen off of something. That's what's supposed to happen. And then like seconds, like milliseconds apart, the camera turns on and then you die. And so what they figured out how to do is clip through the stairs and trigger only the death camera, only the camera part of it.
Oh my
which
God.
is what stops new collision from loading in the game without touching the plane that actually kills you. So the death camera turns on, collision stops loading, but you are still alive and you're walking around not being able to see anything through the gate because it hasn't loaded. The collision data for it has not loaded because you triggered this death camera. You sit down at the bonfire, you walk away from the bonfire, everything reloads, and you're on the other side of the gate that you couldn't open. And that's the Sen's Gate Skip. I'm like, what? And like just the fact that they figured out how to do that is ridiculous. That's like to have discovered it completely by touch and without understanding what's happening and just sharing things around, and then like later to figure out how it works. Just I love stuff like that. So cool.
So creative. It is like, it really does take like a really special kind of brain, I think, to just be able to deconstruct the way a game works. Like I'd say effortlessly. I know it takes great effort, but to do it so consistently and successfully across communities is something I think is very special, very, very cool. Something I can never, ever even dream of doing myself.
Yeah, and Dark Souls, I think From Software speedruns are one of those like foundational communities for sure. Like there's a huge history of like solving how those games work. Like Mollie, was it you or Ted that was talking about Elden Ring speedruns?
Me.
Yeah, like I'm sure that like relies on similar tech to other FromSoft games, but yeah, those are so cool to watch people pick apart.
That one's like also, I think like just such an interesting example because I think similar to Larian, like they've got their own proprietary engine and they like it's all in house and they've been using it, both of them, for like 10 plus years. And so it's like there's just like a kind of quirkiness to it. I think you can observe. Yeah,
It's so cool.
Yeah, I think I hadn't thought about it that way, Ted, but you're so right that like having that consistency of game and like that's where some of this comes from. It's like how the game engine works is what people are learning to actually interact with more so than the game itself. Like they're interacting with a layer beneath the proper gameplay to make things happen. And Bethesda is the other huge example of that, right? Like Bethesda speedruns are also very foundational to like modern speed running. I mean, people do Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, Skyrim, all that stuff.
my favorite is still Elder Scrolls Oblivion. There's this temple in the main Imperial City, and it's like that's where like the end game scene is. And there is because like the way they do it, like they have those different cells, right? Like you're in the overworld and then you click on the door and then they load into an interior, right? Which is, I feel like people are moving away from in design. So you've got this big temple, and instead of going inside the temple, if you can reach the top of it, you can clip into it and like fall inside of it. And there is a door to the end game version of that area, like underneath the temple. And the way you get up there is you use paintbrushes, I believe. Like there is a glitch you can do where if you drop them, the paintbrush hangs in the air and then you clip on it. And so you like climb up to the top of the temple with paintbrushes and then fall into the bottom and then you open a door to the end of the game. Always loved that.
Again, how do people figure this stuff out? That is like, it still is the thing that really, really surprises me the most. I think one of the examples that I can remember of like people finding strats and optimizing them, I think it was one of the old Mario Karts where they were like skipping parts of the track and like ending up reversed, like ending up like going against the direction of the track. And if I remember, like doing these skips was like very inconsistent originally, and then I think someone discovered like a really, really easy way to do it. I wish I could remember the specific details. And then they had discovered like a far more like simple and consistent way to pull it off. And again, like you say, Lauren, it just becomes completely folded into like the core of speedrunning the game, right? Because I think originally it was a strategy that not everyone was using because it was so inconsistent and so like so tight on like the spacing and the timing that it was often quicker to just skip it altogether. And then as soon as it became a lot easier to do, it became far more like folded in. And that's something that I really do love. I don't know if you guys have ever watched like Summoning Salt before. He is, yeah, like if any of you are interested in speedrunning and you have never seen any of Summoning Salt's videos, I would highly, highly recommend that you go and watch them. He covers like a whole host of speedrunning like history for different games. He's covered like a ton of the older games. He's covered some newer games as well. His videos are like very, very informative and very interesting as well, I will say.
Everyone thought that Dr. Poo Poo owned with the bungo stip would be impossible to beat, but that was before they met Mr. Yoshi 93.
And it just zooms out, and it's like, because he always does like the little dots, right? And then it just zooms out, and it's someone's dot that's at a lower time, and it's like,
with
damn!
that really good like ambient music, like the kind of synthy stuff. Oh,
yeah, Summoning Salt's videos are fantastic, and if anyone here has any interest at all in speedrunning and different speedrunning communities, go and watch those videos because
appointment viewing when a new one comes out.
Yeah, they literally, as soon as a new one comes out, like either I text my boyfriend or he texts me and we're like, new Summoning Soul video. And then the next time we're together, we like sit down and we watch it. It's a whole like event for us. Lauren, you have to watch Summoning Soul. He is fantastic.
2 thumbs up.
Yeah, 2 thumbs up. Summoning Soul, if you're listening, thank you for making very cool videos. We love them.
My personal shout out is for Tomato Anus, actually, who has the worst.
Sorry,
name.
what?
Tomato Anus. Yep.
Okay, I did hear that correctly.
Yep. So Tomato Anus was a
Tomato Anus, I'm so sorry.
A very prolific, I think mostly Fallout speedrunner who like did a lot of explainer videos on how different like runs in Fallout work. And I think the one time he like went to AGDQ at some point and had to like run under a different name or something like that. That did happen at some point. It was, I forget what the
please Tomato Anus is what people call my father.
No, for real. It was like some like slightly more appropriate name and I don't remember.
Tomato Cloaca.
I'll have to look it up because it was hilarious that happened. But he does really great videos as well, and he's now pivoted more into like doing. His YouTube channel is less of his own speedrun, it's more Speedrun Explained, which is him getting a runner for a different game to help him write a script to explain how their speedrun works and like basically teaching people like the tech that's going on in it. Like it's not teaching you how to speedrun, but it's like making the speedrun of that game comprehensible to you if you're just like curious about, you know, why these things work and why speedrunners are doing them. So his channel right now is just a ton of those videos, and I love them. They're super informative. His voice is very soothing. He's just like very nice to listen to, and I think historically he's had a very good attitude about like, you know, if you want to get into speedrunning, like just try it, like, you know, and like make up your own category. You don't have to compete in some big category. You can make up a stupid speedrun. Do it just for funsies. Like you can make up a really dumb speedrun and just like that's your own personal thing.
That's
like, it's not
That is another thing I love about speedrunning is there are categories for everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want to do an any percent speedrun, you can do a nipple percent speedrun. I think one of my favorite speedruns is it like the pet percent speedrun, or like the dog percent speedrun in Breath of the Wild, where I think you have to like go around. I think it's like a pet the dog speedrun is in a few different games, but I remember watching specifically the ones in Breath of the Wild because I think you have to like. Do you have to like give them like apples or something? I think you can like give the animals like treats in Breath of the Wild, and there's like a speed run that's just dedicated to petting every single like dog in that game. That's kind of, you know, if you're like, I don't want to speed run the whole game. Oh, how long will it take me to like just get there, or how just do this thing? And you could just do that, and that's okay. That's a thing that you can do if you don't want to do like 100% like glitchless speedrun. You don't have to. You can do a speedrun that might take you like 2 minutes to try, and that's kind of, I like how kind of approachable it is across all its categories, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It really reminds me of like amateur athletics in a way, right? Like if esports is like fucking NFL. Sorry for swearing. I forget if we're allowed to swear or not. Like speedrunning to me is like track and field, or like powerlifting or Olympic weightlifting. Like it is something that you can really engage in on a hobbyist level, I think, more healthily and easily. And even the people who are best at it, like they can make a go of it as a living, they can make it their thing. But there's like an amateurism to it, not in like the sense that they're unskilled, but in like the real classical sense. Like amateur athletics, like you are not sponsored, you're not salaried. Like it's, and that's something I think really lends to this feeling of collaboration and fun to it. Also, I'm really sorry not to harp on the tomato anus thing, but I feel like that is an important part of speedrunning, is because people always have names like tomato anus. I always think of Sephiroth Ken, who was one of the OG Super Smash Melee like legends, and just like, do you know, like, are you aware that this name will follow you into your 40s? You know what I mean? This will define you to the version of you that exists in the most other people's heads will not be Tony, it will be Tomato Anus. You know what I mean? That's your legacy.
By the way, I did look it up, and the name that he used for AGDQ was Tomato Angus, as beef.
Oh. I like that.
It truly is like, so speaking of AGDQ, which was like we said last week, and it was back in person again, which was really great. I feel like a lot of people watched AGDQ, as you said, Mollie, in 2020 when it was all online and it was not in person. But this has historically been an in-person event that people go to, like at a convention center, and the tone of it is really great. You just have like people on camera, like you have a speedrunner who's in front of a monitor like doing a speed run, and then they'll have like two commentators sitting behind them who are also runners of that game, who are helping explain what's going on while that person plays. And yeah, just like, you know, reserved, polite, nice people calling each other things like, yeah, I'm Tomato Anus and I'm here with like Sparkle Bob and whatever. And like we all have like our, you know, teenage internet name, and it's not like live streamers, like YouTubers and like Twitch streamers don't also have ridiculous names, but something about speedrunners, theirs are always like top meme tier names. Like they're always the weirdest ones.
They are beautiful. I think gamer names in general need to be studied. I think that's like they're like
Deep
a whole
psychology.
yeah, they need to be in a study. Scientists need to look at them. I feel like gamer names like a whole other podcast, right? But I checked out a little bit of AGDQ. I was quite busy last week, so I didn't check out as much as I wanted. But I watched a little bit of. There was a Typing of the Dead speedrun, which is a game I've wanted to play for a very long time and I haven't. And I was like, oh, it's just like how fast he can type, right? Like how hard could it be? It's like, no, there's like branching paths in that game, which I didn't know. And like, I guess you have to pick the paths that will get you there the quickest. And there was very early on, there's a point where he like types and he only gets a B grade. And I'm like, oh, that was a mistake. And then they go on to explain like, no, sometimes you have to like delay the typing a little bit, because otherwise if you do it too fast, the NPCs like thank you, and that like takes up time in the speed run. So we had to let the guy get like booted in the back, so he wasn't capable of saying thank you, like delay it just by like that tiny bit so that he didn't get that extra time, which I thought was so interesting. Like I didn't realize there would be as much depth to a Typing of the Dead speedrun. That's on me. That's on me because I haven't played the game before.
No faith.
Yeah, that's my mistake. But it was really, really cool. And then the other one I watched was a Bloodstained Ritual of the Night speedrun, which was like hard mode Zangetsu run or something. I think that was like the specific category. And the guy who was speedrunning, I think Bobby, it's like Bobby with like an EIGH. So Bobby, he was like so casual, so nonchalant, doing like a really good job of like explaining what, like obviously there was the commentators there as well to help, but he was also doing a lot of explaining about what he was doing and why he was doing it. He was like so entertaining and interesting to watch, and the credits rolled and he's like that was fast. And then they were like, yeah, dude, you got a world record. And he's like, I got a world record. And then just immediately goes into like, oh, buy the AGDQ humble bundle. Like just no time on his victory whatsoever. And it was such an entertaining speed run to watch. And if you watch any AGDQ speedrun from the last few days, I recommend you watch that one because it was really, really entertaining.
Yeah, I'd say there's a lot of very like esoteric types of speedrun. Like my personal favorites are like the Bethesda and the FromSoft game speedruns, which, as I've mentioned, like involve lots of glitches and weird stuff. I think like maybe one of the more accessible things or like approachable things to watch rather are platformer speedruns.
Yeah.
Like level-based platformers and also Metroidvania platformers, I think they also involve glitches, but a lot of times also just involve people playing very quickly and very accurately in a way that just like immediately makes more sense than like a Bethesda game where somebody is reload dashing in the air by like flying, and you're like, what am I even looking at?
I think that segues into something I think about a lot, which is like what makes like a game good, not just to speedrun, but to watch the speedrun of.
Mm.
Because I just like a great tension for me is that I love crusty ass old CRPGs and the new games that are trying to be crusty ass old CRPGs.
Mm-hmm.
But like I love them. Those are my favorite games to play. They're not fun to watch. Like even like if you know them really well. And if like Baldur's Gate 3 is like such an interesting exception to that rule because it's so like easy to parse visually, I think, compared to something like Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous, a game I love but has the worst name ever. And then also like has like so many of these like kind of mechanical weird bits to it. So it's not just like doing like tactical fights really well. It is to speedrun Baldur's Gate 3 like you're enhancing your jump ability and jumping past fights and doing like visually exciting, interesting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like a little balance, right? I think you need like a good level of like goof or jank. You need like a little bit of goof or jank, I think. A little bit of like you say, like visual clarity, like being able to pass or understand in the moment what's going on, which I think comes from like what the other thing that I think makes a good speed run, which is just a high level of precision, like a high level, like you say, of accuracy, right? I think that kind of helps feed into the visual clarity a little bit. And then you want like a little bit of goof and jank that maybe you can't quite understand why that's happening, but I think it makes for good entertainment for why it's happening. I think though that's like the little triangle for me, the little like trifecta of what makes like a good speed run.
The reverse long jump effect is like the
reverse long jump effect. Yeah.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was pointing out about the Hitman 3 runs is that like they're so fast and like when you hear it explained, it's very interesting, but you watch the 7-second speed run and you're like, did I enjoy that? Was that fun to watch? Maybe not. And sometimes it's not about the game, but it's about the category of speedrun as well. Like this year's AGDQ run of Dark Souls was an any % no wrong warp run, I believe, which means that they are skipping less of the game. They're not doing a very short speed run that skips over a bunch of stuff. They actually are fighting a decent amount of bosses. They do that Sendscape skip that I described earlier, but it's like a 30-minute run where like you're running very fast and you are fighting bosses in a kind of glitchy, hacky way, like abusing certain mechanics to like kill them in 3 hits, but it is comprehensible as like a mental narrative of I am running to the boss, I am killing the boss, I am going to the next box, and that's Dark Souls done very fast. Like, whereas the Hitman one, it's like I don't know what I just saw.
Yeah, like it's over before it begins.
A similar vibe to the Baldur's Gate 3 runs. Like I think we did most of our reporting about the shadow boxing skip, whereas at AGDQ I think May did all 3 acts in a goofy way, but with none of the really out there, going to Mars stuff.
Yeah, I think that's why it's cool that you might have like glitchless speedruns as well, which is just like pure, just going straight. I think I once watched like an Animal Crossing pay off all debt glitchless speedrun, which was like it was like 20 hours long. It was absolutely ridiculous. It was like I think I just watched it like over the course of a few nights, and by watched it I mean I put it on, watched it for a little bit, fell asleep, and then the next night I would be like, oh, they're here now, and I would just keep doing that for a couple nights until it was over. But I think that's kind of what's nice as well, is like I don't think either method is particularly frowned upon as far as I'm aware. Like you have the people that will kind of use the jank, and that in itself is a skill to kind of use and abuse the jank, and then you have the people that do perhaps more like a pure take on the speed run, which is also a skill. Like they're both, I think they both take so much skill and so much finesse, but in very different, cool and unique ways.
Now that's the correct like answer and opinion, but I feel like I always see it's like Tony Xbox r/gaming YouTube commenter. Be it like there are still people who are like, you didn't beat the game right, like you used glitches, like that's cheating. Like, and it's like, where have you been? Like,
yeah, I've known people like that.
About it.
Yeah, I actually take that back. I have known people who behave like that. So
right.
There are people out there, but I feel like generally among the people who care, the people who matter, I think it's kind of cool to see that there are like two communities kind of existing alongside of each other, both attaining the same goal, but in very different and very cool ways. It's rad. I love it.
Yeah. There were a lot of new games at, well, not a lot, but like there were several new games at AGDQ this year as well. Like Baldur's Gate 3 was there, and I know the new Zelda was there. I didn't watch that yet. There was, Ted, did you want to talk about Peanut Butter, by the way? Shout out to Peanut Butter. I
don't really have anything insightful to say about Peanut Butter other than like what a what can you say about Peanut Butter the dog?
Mollie adopted a speedrun at AGDQ. I don't know if you
Wait, what? Oh, is this what this is? Oh,
that's Peanut Butter.
Could you see the confusion on my face?
Peanut Butter the dog. Again, like I don't know the name of Peanut Butter's handler, Peanut Butter's manager, who I understand is also a speedrunner.
Peanut Butter's agent.
Yeah, I was gonna say Peanut Butter's agent.
He built like this incredible rig that's like a floor mat. Like it almost looks like the Xbox accessibility controller, and like has like trained Peanut Butter very well with treats and also hand signals to like point to different segments of the controller, and Peanut Butter can control. I don't know. I don't remember what the game was at AGDQ this year, but I believe I thought Peanut Butter played platformers mostly, like 2D platformers.
Yeah, that makes sense. That is amazing.
Have you guys seen Bunny the dog on TikTok? Like the dog that uses the buttons to communicate.
Oh, the buttons to communicate. Yeah.
Maybe our wise canine successors, the meek will inherit the earth. Like, like please lead us into a brighter future.
I hope dogs continue the legacy of speedrunning. That would be very nice.
Peanut Butter the dog played a game called Gyromite, and I am not familiar with it. But
I am not familiar with that either.
That's what Peanut Butter played this year. What a good boy. Well,
let's go, Peanut Butter. We love you, Peanut Butter. That's like, it's so weird to think that speedrunning kind of started with like Doom, right? There was speedrunning before that, according to Wikipedia, but Doom was like kind of where it started because they had that like record function, and you could get that on like a really tiny file, and that's how it all kind of begun, right? And now we have transcended both video games and humans. Like we have dogs playing like speedrunning games. There are like Duolingo speedruns now. Small Ant, who I brought up previously, he did like a pencil sharpening speedrun, which was him like sharpening, like I forget how many pencils it was. He like timed himself sharpening a bunch of pencils, and I don't know if anyone has beaten him on that, but he was like the best pencil sharpener for a while. I don't know what like
that
what the
like
rules
trending
are.
Into, like Guinness record territory, like fastest pencil sharpened.
Yeah, like it's kind of, it's really cool and interesting to see, because in a way I feel like speedrunning is just such a quintessential like video game thing, right? Like you can't speedrun a TV show, you can't speedrun a movie, you can't speedrun unless you're like putting that shit on like 2 times speed. That doesn't count, right? Like it's such like a quintessential, like even board games, I don't really think like you can speedrun a board game, but I don't think it has that same power and that same finesse, because it's confined to the real world, right? It doesn't have all these like weird janky like virtual rules that you can break. And that's what I think is very, very cool. Is I think it's such a gaming ass thing that it's really cool. I love speedrunners. I love speedruns. It's a very unique thing, I think, to like gaming and gaming culture.
The TV shows and the audiobooks at 2x speed, that's not speedrunning, that's boardroom mindset. That's CEO style interaction with the world. On that point of like it kind of being way bigger than what it originated as. So one thing that always like really like I just make these jokes and I see other people make these jokes, but when you stop and think about it, it's so weird. Like, snarkily commenting on like an r/relationship post and being like, oh, relationship any %, like, speeding through the relationship, or, like political instability in the United States or the UK being like, civil society any % run. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of interesting how
speed run.
Yeah. That was what actually really put it into my head was Mollie bringing up the Animal Crossing debt. But yeah, it's kind of infected language in that way. Like it's broken containment in a really funny way.
Yeah, that is cool as well. I hadn't even thought of that. It's cool.
Yeah. It is broader culture now. Thanks, speedrunning.
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't catch a bunch of AGDQ last week, you can still go to their website to see the playbacks of those runs. And like shout out to AGDQ because their website is like really good this year. I don't know when that changed. It must have been sometime in the last year, but like their schedule on their website is like really nice to look at now. And
it is
navigable. And like the YouTube like symbol link is just a link to the video, like the recording of that live of that run from this year. So like super easy to go and just like find exactly what you want to watch. So do highly recommend. Go watch Peanut Butter. Go watch Baldur's Gate 3.
Go watch Tomato Anus.
Yep. Go watch
Summoning Salt.
I don't think Tomato Anus was in this, but you can watch Regal do Dark Souls for sure. Tomato Angus. Oh my gosh, no. Tomato Angus did Starfield this year. Holy cow, I didn't even realize. Guys.
That's wild. Yeah, go watch. I feel like Tomato Anus doesn't sound as good.
Of course. So.
Yeah, Tomato Angus. I feel like when I say it, the British doesn't make it doesn't sound as snappy in British. Tomato Anus. I feel like Tomato Anus is just so much it has a nicer ring
to
it.
Mock me like this. That was too well done. That was very American of you.
It felt extremely Midwestern, yeah.
Yeah, let it be known that Lauren always speaks in a British accent when she's thinking. So this is my payback.
This is true. I have done that to you. Beautiful. Well, thank you guys for coming and doing just a sort of love letter episode to watching speedruns and how cool they are. Thanks for sharing details and history and all that cool stuff. As the things that we mentioned being posts on the website, things that we've all covered, of course, you can find at pcgamer.com. More things from me, Mollie, and Ted. And then over at pcgamer.com, there's always more features, news, reviews, and opinions, guides, all that good stuff. And then you can talk with Mollie and I about this week's episode at forums.pcgamer.com. So we will see you next week. Bye.
Later, gamers.